And hello again, and here we are back on my drive. And no, this is not my Kawasaki project. No, this is my long-running Moto Guzzi Cafe Racer project. And the reason why I'm showing it you is because, to recap, at the start of the year, I had 5 different bike projects that I wanted to complete this year. So the first one of those was my Kawasaki Z650 project, which I worked on from sort of February through to May or June, and that's now finished. I then moved on to this project and rebooted it, and yeah, I'm pretty much finished now. I've been working on it for about, well, let's see, 10 weeks or so, and it now goes, it stops, the electrics work, and I'm pretty much finished with it, as I say, for this year. No doubt there will be some more small jobs to do when I put it on the road next spring, but for me right now, this bike is complete, at least, as I say, for this year. So, what about the other 3 bike projects that I want to complete this year? Well, 2 of them aren't here. They're elsewhere being worked on in a different workshop, and that leaves 1 bike project I can work on here on my drive. And this is it, my Kawasaki Z650/1170 project, which started out life as a bare frame from a 1978 Kawasaki Z650. And from that bare frame we've built this. So the engine is from a GPZ 1100. It's been tuned and bored out to 1170, and it's got a lot of cool stuff in there to make a lot of power. It's also got early Z1 bodywork, one-off wheels from my old drag bike. Front end is from a Yamaha R1 in one-off yokes, and so on and so on. There's a lot of modified parts on this bike. In fact, I think there are no standard parts on this bike from the original Z650, but that's okay. So, why isn't it finished, and what needs to happen to get it finished? Well, there's one big problem with the bike at the moment, which is due to a part we made for the bike called an outrigger support system. It's normally found on drag bikes, and its purpose is to support the output shaft from the gearbox when you've got a lot more power going through the gearbox than normal. Or, as in my case, the gearbox sprocket, the output sprocket's been moved out to accommodate the much wider back end that I've got on the bike. So that part was made off, series of parts was made, looks fantastic, got it on the bike, but when I put oil in the engine, it leaked out through that system. So I took it off, cleaned it all up, and fitted a slightly bigger and thicker gasket. By the way, this is all completely one-off parts, and I had to make my own gaskets to fit those parts to the engine. Tried again, put more oil in it, very expensive oil by the way, and it still leaked out. So at that point I gave up, because it's a very fiddly job to do, and one reason it is so fiddly is because these parts on the engine were made during COVID. In fact, I think of this bike as my COVID bike, my COVID project. And at the time, the frame and the engine were in 2 different places, and they couldn't meet up. I couldn't go there and see them because it was COVID and we had the lockdown. So consequently, when it all got together, we put everything together, we found quite a big problem in fitting this blooming outrigger support plate. And that problem was you had to fit the gear change selector forks at the same time as you fitted the inner plate. It was just, it's just a nightmare. So yeah, it just makes it very difficult to fit, very fiddly, and yeah, after doing it twice I just gave up. But now I need to knuckle down and try and solve this problem. We have actually checked the inner billet plate we made for straightness to make sure that's not got any issues, and it's not. Perfectly flat, perfectly okay. And of course the gearbox, or rather the engine faces look okay as well. So why it's leaking, I don't know. I suspect it might be because the gasket material I was using wasn't quite thick enough. That's my guess anyway. So I'm going to make another gasket soon out of thicker gasket material and try again, and hopefully that'll work. If not, I don't know what I'm going to do. So anyway, that's the main problem with this bike. I've then got a few small things to sort out, such as to fit some air filters. I was thinking about running it with open lossy stacks, but this is a very expensive engine and I don't want the head to be ruined by grit and crap getting into the head from the open carbs. So it's got to have some air filters fitted. I've also got to sort out a problem. I want to improve the brackets I'm using for mounting the front mudguard, which we'll come to in a minute. However, there's also an addition I want to make to the bike, which won't be easy to fit. So let me go and grab it and I'll show you what it is and why it might be quite difficult to make it fit on this bike. And here it is, all the way from Japan. And what it is a beautiful carbon fibre cockpit fairing based on one from a Kawasaki Z650 RS Cafe model, and it looks really nice. So I want to fit this to this, and it won't be easy because as soon as I try and put it on the bike, as you can see, well, first of all, these indicators get in the way, so they'll have to be moved and new brackets made for them. And also, if I look at photographs of the way the standard Kawasaki Z650 RS Cafe mount this fairing, it has a very complicated bracket. Now that bracket also holds the instruments, that's not really an issue for me, but as you can see from the photographs, it is quite involved. Now I won't be copying that exactly. I can't do because the front end of my bike is completely different from that on a Z650 RS, which has upside down forks and so on. So what can we see? Well, we've got a hole here, hole at the base, we've got the holes at the top here to mount the screen, which I've got by the way, but we've also got two bosses here in the middle of the fairing, and they slide into rubber grommets that are part of the that are attached to the standard bracket on the Z650 RS. So I need to sort of mimic those mounting points but make it work with my bike, which won't be easy, but I've got some ideas and hopefully we can make it all work and it shouldn't be too difficult. Then of course, once it's mounted, I've got to get it painted. So I'll get it painted by Mark the Painter in that colour of course, and I think I'll just have it all red with just some the two gold lines here at the base just low down here, because the blue and the gold would go about here, which isn't really, doesn't make sense, you know, it's not long enough and it would look not right, I don't think. So yeah, I've got to mount that to this, and that's something I'll be working on in the next week or so, hopefully. So that's the addition to the bike. Now the reason why I want to mount it is because A, I think it looked a lot better, but also I also wanted to fit the standard Kawasaki Z dual instruments, tacho and speedo, to the front of the bike, because it's a very classic, iconic look. But because I'm using a completely different front end, I had to use an electronic speedo, so the standard tacho and speedo wouldn't work. Therefore, I use this thing here, which is a Daytona combined speedo tacho unit, fully electronic, with all the idiot lights built in. And that looks fine, but it looks a bit lost here, and I would, as I say, would have liked to use the classic twin clocks. Now I could, I guess, have bought the standard twin clocks and their housing and taken out the mechanical drive speedo and replaced it with some kind of similar electronic speedo, but I wasn't able to find anything of the correct size or even the correct style, you know, of the sort of writing and so on, of the needles and whatnot. So it would look very odd, you know, you got a retro tacho and a sort of more modern speedo. It wouldn't look right to me, so I went for this particular option. And the idea all along was to fit a cool sort of cockpit fairing, a bit sort of Mad Maxy. And if I did that, it wouldn't really matter that I didn't have the classic dual clocks, because you couldn't see it anyway. It would be hidden behind the fairing, and that's why I've always wanted a cockpit fairing. Now this particular fairing here wasn't bought for this bike. Oh no, that was bought for my next project for next year, which is based on a Kawasaki Z1000A1. Now that bike has a complete front end from a Z900 RS, so obviously it would be a lot easier to fit this to that front end. But I've now stolen it from that project and I'm going to use it on here. And I can also buy another one from Japan. They're about 300 quid, so they're not cheap, but yeah, it's a beautiful bit of kit, full carbon fibre. So that's the addition to this bike I want to make before it's finished. So what else do I have to do? Well, I want to make a change to the way the front mudguard is mounted to the front forks. I want to improve the brackets I made some time ago, which mounts this mudguard to these forks. Now this mudguard is from a XJR 1300, And an XGR300 has these same forks, except they're not the same, because the mounts for him are different by about 5mm. I thought they're the same, but they're not the same, so I've got to make up some decent brackets here just to make sure the mounts are in line. And then we'll get them hard anodized black too. Yes, that's okay. Another issue I found is that over the time I've had the bike, it looks like one of these fork legs, one of the fork seals is starting to weep a little bit. See that there? So that's going to need taking apart at some point and new seals fitted. I've actually got the seals, I just haven't bothered changing them because it's such a hassle to do. You know, just prop the bike up, you need plenty of space, which I don't have, so that's been left. But that's a job I've got to do before the bike can go on the road. And so, as you can see, there's not a huge amount of work left to do to get this bike completed and on the road. However, that said, of course, when it comes to bike projects, and my projects in particular, even an apparently small job, a simple job, can become a lot more involved and a lot more difficult than you first imagine. And so we'll have to see how I get on with this particular bike in the next few weeks. And so for now then, thanks for watching and cheers.